am James Craig, an independently published author. You can find one of my books in the description. Today, on this stream, I am here to predict the future. And to do so, gonna look at the past. And I brought on two other authors. I brought on John Douglas, author of the Black Crown, right? Did I get that name right?
Yes, sir. It is the Black Crown.
And R.H. Snow, who has been on before, author of Walker of the Damned series. And this is actually kind of a follow-up to the last time she was on. I think it was the last time, where we got on the subject of selling romance to men.
Yes.
Which, in that phrasing, is impossible.
Is
the essence of it, though, I think might be an untapped market, which is what I want to talk about. The reason I say it's impossible is because romance is not really romance anymore. The romance genre is by and large a euphemism for smut.
Yes. That part is true. However, I believe that we can actually overcome that. They want you to believe that. Don't listen to them. They don't know. The truth is it's alive, and I will tell you where to find it.
Excellent. Genre, obviously, I think most people would agree, got defined by what I used for the thumbnail today, Pride and Prejudice, which apparently I'm the only one here who has actually read it.
No, you're not. I read it in high school, and I was so... it wasn't that it was boring. It's that I was looking for something a little different, and also because I was in theater, and so I sort of fudged. And I'm so sorry, Ms. Miller, if your spirit's still out there, I love you. And I sort of didn't read it, and instead I did what I usually do, which is this is the reason I'm not a reviewer. I was so good at it. I wrote about what I thought Pride and Prejudice should have been, and it was actually pretty close, and I got away with it. So I actually have not read the book. I'm sorry. I read Jane Eyre. I read The Scarlet Letter. What more do you want from me? Come on.
Okay, so I haven't read The Scarlet Letter. Nobody has read all the books they should read.
No, well, they can't. There's no way. We are finite humans, and that's why we get on streams like this to share with each other what we think are the most important things.
Oh, believe me, the topic of what they made us or asked us to do book reports on in school, that could fill up a completely different stream in and of itself. And it seems to have been popping off a lot more lately on social media, and that goes hand in hand with the topic of why don't men read? Well, look at a good look at some of what they made you read in school is a pretty big indicator of that. You know, you want to start the theory being you want to start kids off with stuff that is classics, and without kind of realizing that, you know, it was written in a different time in a different way that might not necessarily catch, you know, the imagination of how kids enjoy reading. But again, it's a totally different stream.
We can definitely do that stream another time. I have thought that what I should do is start pulling up the reading curriculum for various school districts and going through it. That's a lot of work, though. And that's actually kind of the problem, is they assign a lot of dry books.
Even when they're assigning something that, this is trendy, this is hip, they're really assigning stuff they like. And now that's cool. A lot of us, and Britton from a Samoki guy who had interviewed me, reads at a very high level, and he loved, for instance, The Great Gatsby. Why? Because it is an interaction of human beings and a tale of lost love. But he performs at a different level. He's been reading classic fiction so long that it wasn't a challenge for him. However, for most of us that are coming into high school, that's our first real taste of the classics at that level. And so the books that your teachers pick, if they have a choice, and a lot of times they don't, but they're usually a list and they get to add to it. It's what they like. It's what they think is important. And they are seeing it from a 30 and up, usually, approach. And that includes regret, sin, they're like actually sin, like where you've done something you wish you hadn't done, and hope. And it is a completely different mindset than a person that is 15 that is reading something that they're just trying to find out what romance is. They don't grasp what I loved about The Scarlet Letter that makes me unique among humans, evidently, in this day and age, is because I actually grasped the romance of it, and I understood that it was actually a mystery. And because I'd been reading classics long enough, I was able to do that. I've been reading classics since I was a small child, and I was raised with them. And if you're not going to raise people reading classics, then you have to start with something that is a little more direct in approach and maybe a little bit easier for them to understand. And then you go towards those books as a mature reader.
Yeah, so people need like, it's good to read good books, but there's kind of this fundamental requirement first of you need to have the habit of reading any books at all.
Yeah.
Get into, well, okay, now you're a regular reader. You actually enjoy the process. You don't find it to be a chore.
Yeah.
Like, literally, the effort of reading books for some people is too much, which is sad.
What happened to Royce? Remember, he's long said that reading was a punishment for him, so he didn't get any joy out of it. And he didn't discover that he could enjoy reading until later in life. And in some cases, when it comes to these old classics, having someone explain it a little bit to you a little beforehand in such a way that it's kind of sells the book on you, as Razorfist did with the Shadow novels for me.
Yes.
But I knew these things existed. I know these things are there, but just picking it up and going blindly, it oftentimes doesn't always translate well, especially if you pick up something you don't really know what it is or what you're in for, and it can be a little bit of a shock to the system.
Right. So I think I might be in the minority when I say I don't mind that romantasy is a current popular genre.
No,
it's at least reading.
Me either. And what bothers me is when the cross-pollination of romantasy readers kind of come into like the epic fantasy and science fiction spaces and start casting a bunch of aspersions about what we enjoy or what we've enjoyed for a long time. Because the stereotype for a lot of the feminazis that have come over from that era getting mad, they see it all through like the lens of, say, Conan, right? It's all fantasy is about is big sweaty, big muscle dudes with big swords killing people and laying pipe with beautiful women. And like, that's really a disservice to a lot of the, that's dismissing the entire genre entirely based on the perception of one, usually through the movies. I guarantee you they've never read the books or even attempted to.
They're basically just quoting Stephen King's opinion about Conan. They're literally quoting almost verbatim. They've heard it repeated world without end, much like those who have never actually watched The Searchers with John Wayne in it, thinking it's a racist piece when actually it is against racism. It talks about our perceptions of human beings through the lens of racism. They haven't ever watched it. They don't know what it's about. The same thing with Conan. They've never seen it. They've never watched it. They only know what Stephen King said. And God bless Stephen King's heart, but he has an opinion about it. It is not the actual definitive version of Conan, nor should it be. People should make up their own minds by reading the piece first before they decide they want to opine about it.
Yeah, they're attacking a trope, and that's what pisses me off. As they come and say, "Now the objectification that we see present in this work of fiction is bad. Don't do it." You go over to Book Talk and Bookstagram, and you will see so much thirst traps. So much thirsting over the smut that they have in their genre over there, and they are totally shameless about it. That's what irritates me, is the hypocrisy of it, to come into our yard and cast aspersions about what we enjoy and then go back over and enjoy it on the one. You see a microcosm of this in the video game industry where they the bloggers on Kotaku and whatnot complain about sexy female characters in video games, and then they'll run articles about sexy guys and shit like that.
4 words, y'all. Don't kink shame me. Now, if you're going to go off with your little magical area that you have, and you're going to have the Monster Boinker books, or you're going to have all these other things, don't kink shame me. If I like men and women together, don't kink shame me. If I like big guys and little gals, don't kink shame me. If I like film noir where the man and the woman are equally put together, but they're sort of frenemies, don't kink shame me. If I like sexual dichotomy in my work, don't kink shame me. And that's what we're all going to say it. Repeat it after me right now. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. You get what Miss Becky says. I'm coming to the boudoir bodacious system, my double-whited dim, and the words are what? Don't kink shame me. They cannot fight.
I don't want a clip of that floating on the internet yet.
I'm going to say it out loud. I have a thing about men. I really like them. And I really like men and women together. And that's my kink. You can't shame me for it, because you already said that nobody can be shamed for anything that they possibly could think. If you think it's weird, then that just means I'm oppressed. So that's the way it is. We're just going to go ahead and join that party right now, because we have a reason for thinking what we think. And the truth is, we have been shamed into believing it's strange. Do you know why women love romantasy so much? Would you like to know?
A variety of reasons, largely the idea of a ridiculously sexy, high-status man falling madly in love with them.
Yes. But it's also because it objectifies men and changes it from men to a monster or to a trope of some kind, a billionaire, something that is so far removed from the average guy that would actually ever approach them for any reason, that way they can say, oh, I don't believe that about men, and males are toxic. Oh, males are toxic and it's making me, I can't do that anymore because that makes me a bad lady. So you have
Yes, there's certainly a hypocrisy in the romance genre of, men are toxic, but the toxic one into me, though.
Oh, the men that they thirst over in the Books Talk and Bookstagram areas. These guys in real life would be either serial killers or sociopaths, or the hypocrisy is irritating. I don't care. I don't go over to their spaces and bitch at them about what they enjoy. So I get a little defensive when they come over here and kind of do this thing in our genre.
Yeah.
But I've always enjoyed a little bit of romance in a lot of the fiction that I read. It's not a problem. It's not a problem for me. It's a problem when someone steps up and says that they don't care for it. I don't care what you want. And now they've kind of brought romance to a place where it's way more overcomplicated than it needs to be, and has been in the past, especially with the advent of social media. So, kind of taking the literature version of that and just having that's one thing that's really good about like romance books is it really does just put the focus on the interaction between the two, and there's a whole world of different tropes and elements in the romance genre that that you can glean from it. I've said this before, and this is probably one of the reasons I'm on the stream, is that authors, we have a tool sets, right? And you can write for however long you want in a particular genre or a given genre. But you can always learn something else from a genre that's outside what you normally write. I mean, you mentioned Stephen King earlier. What was the Dark Tower series but his take on an epic fantasy, epic quest? And for all his faults and flaws, and believe me, he has many, and I have many opinions about him, that is one of the most imaginative and interesting epic quest, epic fantasy style stories, ever told. Even with its ups and downs in the genre.
Yeah.
So I have mentioned before one of my favorite authors, Sarah Douglas, who was very good at understanding what appealed to both men and women and being able to make characters that reflected that. Romance, she came from a romance background, and romance was a big part of her books, all her books. It was a very centralized element, but she also knew how to make female characters that were appealing to men. She had heroic men, strong men that were very appealing for female readers.
Yes.
And oftentimes for different reasons. And not everyone has that. There was a book that I read not that long ago. I don't want to title it though, where it was very much written for a female reader. And you saw the male character doing things that would really just defy how a human being would act in real life, because it was all in service of the titillation of what a female reader would expect, as well as a lot of things like validation and propping her up, and a switching of power. That's a big thing in that genre as well. To me, finding a good balance is always the best part, because if I wanted to read just romance written by guys for guys, with those elements that put up front, I probably read more harem books, which are also a big genre. But hey, there you go.
And we're going to talk about the history of that in a minute, and you're going to be shocked when I tell you.
I don't know.
What is the harem genre?
Huh? The harem genre. Yeah. Yes. Go look into that. It was the cover art that kind of drew me in a little bit. But harem books are kind of their own little subgenre that's really big, right up there with lit RPGs.
Romantasy, yeah.
You don't always see a lot of it bleeding
all
over
these
because
popular genres we've touched on have kind of a abstract foundation in common, which is basically raw wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
It's giving people what they want in the most undiluted form possible. You look at lit RPG and what is it? It's getting stronger and overcoming bullies, basically. People like the growth and strength, overcoming obstacles, putting bad people in their place. And in a familiar framework of video games, you kind of get to cheat the system and feel clever about it vicariously. That is the crux of basically every successful lit RPG, cultivation, wuxia, you name it. Similarly, romance is the princess fairy tale wish fulfillment of people are looking for this outstanding person and just fall head over heels for them. Mm-hmm. Never going to happen in real life. It's not going to happen.
I think we're seeing that lens also through the latest, of course, and I said this is the difference between being my age versus being yours. When you look at it through the lens of the last 30 years, which is what you're picking up, you saw your parents' book, you saw what you watched what you watched on TV. So you see that from that framework. What you don't realize is romance was initially written by men. That the classics of romance, and I'm going to read a few of them off. The Virginian by Owen Wister, one of the great Westerns, and I mention it in my book. In fact, it's the book that Rose picks up for a reason, because it's a man written by a man about men fighting, killing each other, doing everything else, and the romance between him and this woman that he meets, an older school marm who actually is sort of wants to be the strong, independent woman as she heads west on her own, and he meets her. We have Zorro by Johnston Cullen, a great romance. I consider a very fine one. If you have not read the actual Legend of Zorro, written in 1919, which shows a strong woman rejecting all suitors, but this masked man who's incredibly strong and virile and everything else, and rejecting his alternate ego, which is the Lord that he is behind the scenes. We also have King Raven by Stephen Lawhead, and I love King Raven because although most men won't think of it as a romance, it actually is. It is, and from my perspective, reading it as actually, I read it for the romance, because you have all this fighting and killing and the intrigue and court and everything else. It is because it goes back to people. And of course, then we have Dragon Riders of Pern with Anne McCaffrey. She's one of the only women that I've actually read that I thought of that is a romance. It actually is. It starts off as a romance. Loved the first one and enjoyed it very much. These, but the vast majority of the classics, as we go back, are written by men. They are romances, but they still have action and adventure. Why? Because they were meant to be read by everyone. Everyone had an idea of what romance was. But we are living in an age, and you are especially, where the sexes have basically been segregated. They've been torn away from each other. You are toxic, and she is a feminazi, and they have been told that they have to be these things or they are bad. You would not believe, and we know that men face a lot of peer pressure. Women are brutal. And I'm saying this as a woman, and I love all my women friends, and my girls will also tell you up front. Women will tell you, you don't need to like him. He's bad. They will literally steal a man out from under you if they think he's hot. And not your good friends won't do that. But they will go after a bad boy each time. And I'll think about why. And then they feel bad about it. They are literally shamed into sleeping with somebody, but not actually being with them. It's okay to sleep with anybody you see, but it's not okay to love them. It's not okay to want a man who's a guy who actually does his job, goes home, loves you, maybe watches a movie and falls asleep. You want this unattainable object. Why? The same reason that people are being bombarded with porn, and men are constantly, they have a romance that they will read, and then they will look at porn because nobody can possibly fill this thing. You are being torn away from real people in real life. What's the difference? In early romances that were written by a man and a few women, they were written with the idea that people would read it and would find someone in their own life. They weren't made to have an unattainable ideal. They were created to teach people how to find each other. It was stories of real people. One of the greatest romances of all time is Little Women by Louise May Alcott. Why? Because it is about women finding each their own little person, and it's a romance, and it's a foundational one for most women's romance. But it also includes both sexes, and if you've actually read it as a man, you'll realize it's very engaging. Women and men have been torn apart. They've been told to go to these unattainable ideals, and now we have women's romance over here that's only for them, and men's romance that's over here only for them, along with a good helping side of porn. Because why? Because people aren't supposed to be together anymore. You're not supposed to say you love a woman that you found attractive. You're not even supposed to approach her in real life anymore. You're not supposed to say you actually found it awesome that a man opened the door for you and winked at you and giggled. It made you giggle. You're not supposed to even say that. You're not even supposed to be allowed to say that you actually were happy that this person approached you even. You're afraid because maybe he really is a killer. You don't know anymore. The world is a very crazy place, but we're seeing this siloing of romance and ideals and the tearing apart, with 1/3 at least of the human population living alone, crying in front of a TV, watching a romantic musical from the 1950s, wondering why they're alone. It's because of your culture deciding that you didn't need to be together.
Did you say 1/3? You think it's only 1/3 of the population?
There's at least 1/3. Yes, there's at least 1/3. We're talking about people who actually have never had sex. This is a 1/3 of people who have never been in any relationship, have never touched a human being in a sexual way and loved it. This is an extraordinary event. You are seeing people literally ripped away.
All right, let's talk about that for in a bit more depth, because that brings me back to my point at the beginning of I'm here to predict the future.
Yes.
The reason I think that selling romance, perhaps under a different name, to men is the future is because there is this complete collapse IRL.
Absolutely.
Basically, everyone I know who isn't already married has basically given up.
Yes. It's terrifying. You wouldn't believe the conversations I have behind the scenes, almost every one of them, because people find out that I'm 61 and they realize she actually lived this long. Maybe she knows something. And the vast majority of people that I talk to online are men. Why? Because that's the ratio. That's the way it is. And I say online, I mean, I'm talking on streams, things like that. The lights go off and they start talking about how lonely they are. They literally start talking about that. I've given up hope of ever finding someone. But women are the same way. They go out now. They'll sleep with somebody. They will sleep with somebody. They've been told this is the thing to do. Good girls go sleep with somebody. That's in Watcher the
We
Day.
are a monogamous culture. For every guy that's alone, there is a woman out there that is also consequently, by the numbers, alone.
Yes.
And it cannot be discounted how much social media has kind of helped in that, because they go online and what you end up finding is they kind of gravitate towards whoever's spouting opinions that give them confirmation bias, right?
Yes.
And they'll cling to somebody who spouts some little bit of nugget of truth. And we're a very, it's a very complex thing, but people want a solution, a simple solution to a complex problem. And so TikToks and YouTube videos and tweets from people very confident in how their love life is going. Yeah. Oftentimes they gravitate towards someone that kind of reflects something that they believe about. Oh yes, obviously all women are just awful whores, and Andrew Tate's right. I should listen to him and not read anything. Yeah, that's not the way to go. Don't listen to Andrew Tate about anything.
Yes,
by the way,
this channel does not endorse Andrew Tate.
Yes.
No, I would.
One of the greatest things I ever did was actually went up on 4chan. And I started in 2006 because, as some of you know, and I haven't said this very often because it makes people a little freaked out, because I did start my own private investigative agency. I'm the only one that's not a private investigator. I started the agency, I do all the assistant work, but I actually created 3 private investigators who work for me. They're my family. And so I work as that. And I started going up on 4chan because I was actually doing an investigation on a particular person. We were looking for the post. I ended up staying. Now, I never had to show something or get them out. I didn't have to do that. I do not know how to Triforce. I cannot do it. I've never been able to do that.
Because the rules changed 5 times. He changed the Unicode before he moved to Google.
Yes, I know. And so I haven't been as much since it has changed dramatically in the last 4 years, and it's become it's fraught with glowies and other things. But if you get past all the craziness and the gatekeeping, and it is there for a reason, there are things that are put out, they're deliberately offensive to stop you from going further. When you get past that, what you find are lonely people trying to support each other, help each other. You don't go on there going, I'm a woman and I do this and da da da. Just listen. You'll hear men talking to each other, and you will find out that they are extraordinarily lonely. They actually long for what was there. How do you approach this? The reason why, because women, they're not on 4chan. They're talking to each other over there. They're talking at the work site. They're talking somewhere else. And they have been told to put on a veil, and that veil is actually feminism. It's going to protect you. There's a monster out there, and he wanders on 2 legs, and he'll look like a great guy. Thanks, Hallmark Channel. You are not, actually, it wasn't Hallmark. It's a Lifetime.
Hallmark is wholesome by formula.
Yeah, I thank you. I'm sorry. I take that back. It's not Hallmark. Hallmark is the guy wearing plaid. He will be the good guy. Always wear that if you go to the Apple Festival. Wear your plaid. She'll be there. However, the Lust and Murder Network, otherwise known as Lifetime Movie Channel, it was always, no matter who that woman fell in love with, He's going to murder you. He's going to kill you. Now,
I noticed that a long time ago. Yes. Every Lifetime movie, the man was either either an abused. He was always the villain, right?
Yes.
Always the villain and never failed. I can tell you 5 words that irreparably damaged like an entire generation of women.
Yes.
Men only want one thing.
It's a hamburger. Are you kidding?
The way they got turned around into a meme, though, makes great content.
No, it is.
Yeah, it is. And that's the best way to really fight any kind of undesirable thing online is to use memetics somehow.
Yeah. So I want you to think of this. Women are forced to wear this veil. The veil is feminism. And the truth is, we all know somebody, and I'm going to be honest with you here because I want to let you know what it's like from this side. There's a reason I'm going to preface with this because it's not about male toxicity. It's about the fact that men are bigger than us. They're stronger than us. They a lot of times think they're smarter than us, which sometimes is helpful, sometimes it's not. And sometimes it's really true. You can kill us. And we all know somebody who was damaged or raped or perhaps even killed. I can actually tell you I know people who were killed. I was nearly sexually assaulted in a stairway, walking up backwards in a pair of high heels. I managed to escape. I did it by my wits because it wasn't because I was bigger, stronger than this guy. We all know that. But we approach men and we actually will come close to you, but we are never completely unaware of the fact that you could literally murder us. That you actually, not because you're evil, because you're just that much bigger. You have no idea what it's like to turn around and a man puts his hand on your shoulder and it's this heavy paw. You could literally take it in your little possum hand and it like completely covers yours. And it's terrifying sometimes when you wake up to the person you married and you roll over and he's actually snoring and you realize his head is huge. He already has this big freaking head. Where did this come from? He's snoring like a maniac. And I'm married to this guy. He could roll over in his sleep and crush me. Why am I even doing this? We're always constantly aware of this. We know women that have been killed. We know women that have been raped. So then we have these other women that are they're some of them are real. They're real survivors, and they really do have a beef. There are others that are back there constantly feeding this thing. You can have sex all you want. Never get close. Never get close. Never let them think they're on top. And always make sure you keep your distance. You must wear this veil of the strong woman, the woman that doesn't need no man like she needs no bicycle. And then you do this balancing act of you're going to have sex, but immediately walk away. You're going to do these things with this guy, and you're never going to let him close enough to actually, you're always going to be the one in control, and you're going to run as soon as you can, because if he gets away before you run, you might get hurt. And then you live your life that way, and one day you turn around and you're like, I'm going to die alone. And the chances are very real that it will happen, that you're not going to meet that person, because we've all been terrified of each other since the beginning. And women wear this veil. We can't tell you we really want you. We can't really tell you that, yes, we really loved you winking at us and we thought it was sexy, because we have been so terrified now into thinking you're going to turn around and murder us in the moment's drop. And then something happens on the news and we see it and we go, okay, let's run. Let's just run. We'll just live our lives. We'll be happy. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. But you're as lonely as we are. Men are as lonely as women. Those who choose to live their life alone because they are that monk, they're the person who wanders, they want to be the explorer, the adventurer, and we'll talk about that in a minute, because that's where the harem sign comes from. That's okay to be that person. It's also okay to be the one that is crying in the corner, watching Singing in the Rain, going, my God, why didn't somebody come to me and sing that song? Just once I would have fallen in love. Because we have to be who we are. We have to finally stop being shamed into thinking that what we want is bad. We want each other. Why are we so afraid? It's because they don't want women and men together. They want the war. They want us to hate each other. And when we all die off in the arms of the government, they will own everything we ever had. And the world as you know it will be gone. So maybe we need to start fighting back. And maybe we need to start finally deciding that we're sick of this crap and we're going to take over the world again. And we're going to write romances that actually mean something. And you're right. We need to call it something else, because that genre has been busted. We're going to start saying, stop kink shaming me. I want to write about what I love. And if you love it too, then find me. I'm out here. Look at that person reading that book and watching that movie. Do you want them? Do they want you? How about y'all go on a date?
All right. So, RH, I want to hear your bit on the origin of the harem genre. But first, are both of you familiar with They Live by John Carpenter?
Yeah.
We used to live in a country where the evil overlords trying to extract all of our resources brainwashed people with marry and reproduce.
Yes.
That used to be the dystopian government who doesn't care about you. Their messaging was.
It's kind of funny how the aliens trying to take over the world had the exact same propaganda talking point as the Bible did. So,
yeah. And at the time, that was edgy. As John Carpenter, still one of the greatest fight scenes ever, and I actually used that fight scene as inspiration for some of my fight scenes. That brutality of it. Roddy Piper was just an absolute beast. I love him. And he did such a great job with that sequence. And if you have not watched it, They Live, go look at just put the fight. It is a remarkably realistic view of two men that don't want to kill each other, but would like to beat the garbage out of each other. And it is a great blueprint for looking at real fights that happen in a real and dirty way. So we moved past the just sword fighting thing. Go ahead, because I think that is that point where, it was edgy then. We're 30 years in. They're telling you, don't reproduce. Just live for yourself. Don't give you kids.
We're overpopulated. It's bad for Mother Earth, this mystical planet we're on.
Yeah, something climate change, something too expensive, blah, blah, blah.
The Earth goddess needs us to die.
Kids are too expensive. Here's 50 pictures a day of selfies with my 5 animals that I have.
Okay, that's the other veil that women are supposed to wear. Oh, I don't really want a baby. I never wanted. I got news for you. Almost every one of us has woken up from a dream where you're holding somebody in your arms. As a person who's struggled with infertility, and actually infertility is a portion of Watcher of the Damned. It is a big part of it, infertility and child loss. And it starts off because Rose is not actually a baby. And so that part of it, we've been shamed into saying we don't want it anymore. Oh, you want babies? Oh, you want babies? Are you some kind of a slow person? You just want to be at home barefoot and pray? No, I love all the other things too. Like every ancestor I ever had that also ran a ranch and did everything else and wrote a bunch of books, and she still had babies, and I can do it too.
And that's a trope they don't like in a lot of them don't like in the romantasy genre. Is one of their biggest icks is the accidental pregnancy, like. And I challenged some in the comment section at one point, and they don't like being challenged on that one. They really don't like it. Yeah, just a bunch of yeah. They want the one half of it, but not the consequences of it. And it's I honestly, if I delved into it a little more, I don't want to delve into it too much. Really, it's really looking too much into the whole power fantasy aspect of the romance genre. Because look, if you want to turn it on its head on the male side, the idea of a guy bagging like 3 or 4 baddies in a harem book is equally absurd, and in real life, equally kind of unattainable.
Well, actually, looking at that from that 4chan post that the first time we really see this show up is about 2006 in 4chan. And that particular part of the fantasy, where they line up all the little anime girls, which one would you choose? And somebody actually put, why? I just choose all of them. Literally, you don't have to choose somebody. They're there for you. They're already there. And maybe that day you just need your best buddy. And oh my gosh, the little tomboy is right there. She's ready to play a video game with you and then wrestle afterwards. Woo, And then you want the sexy siren. The truth is I've told my kids this, I told my husband, there's 4 types of people that you're going to meet. You will meet the one that's your best buddy, or you will meet the one that is your soulmate, the one that just knows what it is you're feeling. You just feel like that connection. Or you meet that animal attraction, the one you see her from a distance, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know who that is, but I can't stop looking. Or you meet the one that is the pedestal. She's literally the goddess. She's in charge of everything. She's running a charity at the same time. She's on the TV, whatever. She's doing everything. She's the overachiever. We cannot be all those things. In fact, you will be lucky if you meet, usually somebody is one thing, and then there'll be a little bit of the other. Fall in love with that person, decide that's who you're going to choose, because they're not going to be everything for you. And you're very blessed. You know what? You may have that one that actually is the animal attraction in your best buddy. The chances are you'll meet your best friend and maybe your soulmate, or the soulmate and the animal attraction, or that goddess who actually deigns to wink at you that one time and she actually goes out on a date with you. Oh my gosh, you scored. That's the whole premise of Say Anything, is that. So we have to realize we can't be everything, but in the harem, you get to have all of it. And this idea that, well, I'll just have all of them, and this trends us towards that push towards your romance is your waifu, the little pillow with the little face on it that you'll never see and you'll never actually know. And then you'll watch porn and you'll be just as happy as if you had a real human in your life. And we've trained an entire generation to do that. And at the same time, we've trained women that if you have a baby, you'll never be anything. I got news for you. I was a single mother. I was 21. I was married at the time. Nobody knew it because I looked like a 12-year-old They all thought I was like really like I was man. I was wearing the scarlet letter because I had to take my ring off because my hands would swell, and I looked like such a baby. And people would literally point at me and go, "This is the reason why society's failing." I'm like, "I'm married." I didn't say it. I just said it that way. But anyhow, so I literally went through that. I succeeded. I finished college with a baby. I went and I worked with a baby. I had my life with a baby, and she turned out to be my very best friend, my daughter. And I would not trade it for a single thing. And when we go back in society, oh, women were so entrapped. They were so entrapped by their families and their lives. I got news. I read my ancestress's letters from 1870 where she's talking about my grandfather. And I read her writing, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And she is discussing a treatise on dreams. One of the things that will influence Sigmund Freud in his work. She is literally a brilliant woman, and she will remain a brilliant woman who lives in the backwoods of Texas, will raise her children, and she will die in childbirth. It doesn't negate her. It only makes her greater because she gave birth to me. Because here I am all of these years later. It is not an either or situation. Women have been achieving. We've also been victimized, and I agree with that. Some people never had that opportunity. Men are victimized too. They've worked in the mines. They've worked in the fields. They die under extraordinary circumstances, and they go to war. And women do the same thing. We fight, we struggle, and we raise kids, and we have the crops. And my mother picked cotton when she was 5 years old, and she nearly died in a dirt floor shack. You want to tell me how hard it is? How about we just go back and go, maybe we ought to just sit up one day and go, yeah, it's hard. Bad things happen. I'm here in this moment, in this time. This is the life I've got. That human over there is lonely, and so am I. Why don't we just try to make this moment, this most beautiful moment we can? Maybe we'll fall in love. And that's the essence of real romance.
As both of you are talking about the harem genre, I suppose I should point out that I publish a harem series.
Yes,
my web novel.
And you were talking about Leo. So I'll go here before, and then I'll let y'all talk because I've been sitting here talking so much, and now I know you hate me. John will be like, and she's still talking to this day. Yes, that's women. And Anna Leonowens actually is from the King and I. Anna, King of Siam, as we know, and it will give birth to a whole group of people. But she is a real human being. We find out later, actually, her mother was from India. Her father was a British military person and a soldier. And she is the result of their marriage. And she was trying to hide this. And she presents herself as an English nanny. And when she is widowed with her young son, she will go around the world to go to the King of Thailand to help tutor his children. Now, she does take embellishments with her story. She will write a fantastic story, and she does make up a lot of things, but she also has a lot of truth in it. And like many authors, she has a sketchy and fascinating past, but she gives birth to two things. And she's one of the most well-renowned traveling Victorian suffragette. She's very much an abolitionist suffragette. One of the first feminine power fantasies is her book about her relationship with the King of Siam and how they have this romantic sort of almost a bond with a man who is married and has a harem, and she will have tales from the harem that she actually publishes. We don't think of a Victorian woman, oh my goodness, they were so repressed. No, they weren't. They wrote the book on the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, and they would also publish the dang it, this just came to my mind. The book all about the Kama Sutra. Thank you very much. What I read when I was 17. And so you have these books. These are Victorian. Oh, Lordy mercy. These are Victorian books. Women wrote these. And actually, it is the Kama Sutra is actually edited by the gentleman's wife. He will come in and translate it. She edits it. She actually burns his paper letter because she said it was just too spicy for the world.
Wasn't that the period where people were saying that women reading books was the work of the devil?
No. Have you read any? You need to go back and you need to look at that. Yes, there was.
Well, you can disagree with it. I'm pretty sure that was a undercurrent in the social climate.
There was some. There were some people who said that. There were also women who read it, who wrote Silas Marr and other books. We have George Eliot, who actually is a woman who writes under a nom de plume. And they had vast social circles of people who would come in and they would discuss books. You have to go back and read the contemporary works. That yes, there's some hater who said women shouldn't be reading. There's that one guy on their version of the internet, and he would get his work published, and all the women would go, "Oh, I don't know about this," and then somebody would say yes or somebody would say no. But the truth is, women were very active in the art, music, and in the literature scene during the Victorian period, and even previous to that. And we have them still continue to be that way. It is a lie of the devil that women have not existed as entities until the 1970s. I did not get my wings from feminism. I got my wings from my ancestresses that I have read their papers and I know what they did, and I have done extensive work on their research. And they, by golly, went to school, taught school, did things. They actually traveled. They actually read books. And no one ever told a single one of them they couldn't do it. And maybe that's just because Texas women are mean, because we expect, this is the thing in Texas, you can be rough and tough little gal. You should be able to shoot and everything. Your man has to be meaner than you. That's the whole point. You put him through his paces. You go out and you see, is he tough enough to handle me? And then you have a big fight with him and you yell, you can't handle me. I just don't know to. And then he has to handle you. Now, if he does, and he does it right as a gentleman, but he's still being all right, that's the one you marry. But he has to be tough enough to overcome you, because he's also got to overcome all the fire ants and the bulls and the cougars that are out there that actually live on my land over there on the backside of it. And I can't go back there without a gun, because
that explains that clip from Yellowstone about the guy walking out of the barn. He sees his wife propped up against it, and his only response is, I don't have the energy for you today.
That is the absolute truth. And yes, you did have places where women are severely oppressed. This is still happening in the world.
Although technically that was Montana. But
we need to look at where women are really oppressed. I need to look at 9-year-old girls being forced to marry old men over there in where they just passed the law in Iraq. We need to look at that and then say, am I really oppressed, or am I just being a whiny person today? And sometimes I would say, yes, I'm oppressed.
This is what we call first world problems.
Yes. And that does happen. Like I said, I was nearly sexually assaulted. Yes, I've had a boss come in and try to pull me over on his lap.
I think a bit of a...
You actually deal with it. You make your presence known, and then you decide you're going to live your life. And I am not defined by what some man tried to do to me. I am defined by how I handle the situation.
When you mention that, it does bring to mind something that occurred to me not too long ago, which is that, we can end up having romance that pops up in a lot of genre fiction. Mm-hmm. At times, it can also end up being a cipher for an author with, much darker proclivities. The thing I'm trying to get at is something that I don't think that has been touched on in a lot of circles, except for a few, but in a lot of genre fiction, especially in sci-fi, for some reason, we've had a lot of sex pests that have put their barely naked fetishes into their work. And this kind of stuff can pop up like out of nowhere when you're reading something. Where the hell did that come from?
You're talking about like Legends of Gore or something like that?
Oh, dude.
No, I don't even know what that is, but
I do. James, you naughty thing. You should not be reading those books. You are too young. And the first one isn't nearly actually as wild. You start reading it and you realize, yes, he realized this was selling and he just kept going down that road.
I haven't actually read it, although I am considering reading it out of curiosity.
Okay, I will admit, I read it. I read the Gore. I read the first one. I would read anything I could get my hands on. It was only, there was a whole set of paperbacks, and I had them over there, and I was like, oh, here's one. And I was like, holy cow, what the heck? But yes, I read all 17 whatever Conan that I could find. It was like from back to back to back. Yeah, no.
We're talking about books by John Norman.
Yes, Gore. Yes, it turns into a power fantasy. He found that there was more or less smut and he could sell. But the first book, his book is actually more of a world building thing, and you have to sort of like, wow, he does have some proclivities, and it goes further. We have the same thing show up though in Neil Gaiman's work, and people are seeing this now. Part of this is because authors will start to reflect their characters. If they're not careful, they write these characters and they become more and more like that. Louis L'Amour had the same problem, and a lot of people don't realize that. He would literally sleep his way through the Wild West, go and find some chick that sort of fit his idea. That brief period where you meet his girl on scene, and he doesn't even describe her. It's just like, she was a fine woman. She didn't even look at him. He kissed her and said, I've got to go kill a man. And at the same time, the dude's like literally, the author is literally going to sleep with each gal he could find. A great author. I love Louis L'Amour, but they all have these proclivities, and they start to become their own persona. It is a huge danger. And I know, because each of you are going to become extremely famous, and you're going to find out that suddenly you turn into your half-orc prince, and you're going to make him do more and more daring things, or you're going to become your infinite money man. You're going to be like film noir down there. You're going to meet this chick. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. But you can't let yourself become your character entirely. You have to be able to be yourself know when you're going too far, because it does start to reflect in your work.
So Harsha, what are you saying are the proclivities of these romantasy authors?
Yes, I will absolutely say it out loud. They're subverting what they normally would have wanted, just a guy that's, you know, big. What we love about, there used to be a phrase called "Vive la différence," which meant that long live the difference between men and women. And I don't know if you all have ever even heard it, but it was literally about the differences between men and women. Vive la différence meant that love the way that we are so different. That's what makes us love each other. And so we now being told that we can't even celebrate whether or not I exist as a double chromosome woman at double X. How do we even know who's who? How do we know what's what? Well, when we look at those things, there is a core in us as we look towards people. And yes, there are people who have different tastes. So this is not everybody. I'm speaking of people who are into a traditionally heterosexual romance situation at first. That's the first thing we're usually exposed to. That's what we see. And we see something that resonates with us. It's usually because the person you're looking at is different. There's something different about her, something different than from you. The first time you notice girls are different and you suddenly don't want cooties anymore. You don't suddenly go, wait, that's kind of hot. I don't know why I feel that way. I'm so confused. And
hold on, maybe I do want cooties.
Women, it happens to us when we're like 9. You can be 6-year-old, you're watching something, I don't know why, but he's so dang cute. You know, well, they're in us. We have something we respond to, whether it's your own proclivity out there right now. I'm going to speak to that. You may have a different proclivity than I do. I'm speaking of this proclivity, so don't kink shame me. And this is about the love of the difference between men and women. And we have been taught now that we cannot speak that one. It's the love that dares not speak its name anymore. You can say anything you want. You can say anything that you care for. You can be furry, you can be gay, you can be trans, you can be anything else. It's okay to talk about that. It's not okay to say, I love the difference between men and women. I love the way they interact with each other, and they're so different, and yet they need each other. And they're also so much alike in so many ways because they're humans. We are no longer allowed to love that. And so women subvert it to, well, I can't say I really wanted a big, strong guy because they're going to eviscerate me online, but I can write this story with a monster in it. I can write this story with a dragon in it. I can write this story with an orc, a demon, a Dracula. I can write it about anything but a man. And they are subverted. They actually cloak it. If you watch it, look at these romances. When they're not sapphic, and the sapphic is a whole different thing. Sapphic is very different in nature. But when we look at the heterosexual romantasy monster genre, inevitably the monster is a man. Let's go there because we need to finally say it. And Jordan Peterson was right in this instance. Men are monsters. We all have a monster within us. You have to be who you are. There is a reason why, and I'm going to point you at something that's very important, and it's probably one of the most iconic scenes from early romantic musicals, and it will be The King and I, where you look at the Yul Brynner is standing, and it's and Gertrude Lawrence sings "Shall We Dance." Now they're equally, they're very much alike. They're the same height. They are dressed differently, but they each have a certain amount of power in the scene. But they are coming together as a sexual dichotomy. And as you watch, he starts off, and there's it is a courtship from the Western world, actually from all over the world in many ways, and it's. In that whole clip, you will find everything that men and women had always desired in each other. Even though they're the same height, there's a very big difference in who they are. And you can tell by the way they approach each other. And she starts off being the one to take the lead. But in the end, there's a moment that appears, and I challenge you. If you ask a woman, Beauty and the Beast, the animated version, there's several movies, Cinderella being one of them, the live action version. There's a moment. And if you look in the comments, you will see exactly what you need to know, everything about romance. Women that are your ages talking about when Yul Brynner puts his hand around her waist and pulls her towards him. There is that moment where the man takes the lead. The woman is actually in the lead to begin with, but the man takes the lead second. And as you watch all the way through, because at the end the music stops and it's just him, and he's approaching her and he's coming closer and closer, and you realize the power dynamic between the two, both of them very powerful, and at the same time they are fighting at every step of the way. And this is the nature of the Vive la différence, the sexual dichotomy coming together to form the yin and yang, and it becomes the dance of one. And we have this dichotomy that we love so much, and we have been told we cannot have it, so we subvert it to a different thing, and it will become the monster who almost inevitably has the power, and he wants to overpower her. He carries her away, or he does something, and she has to fight back, and she has to show all these things, because we can no longer say, I want these things, but I don't know how to get them. And at the same time, I don't want somebody to hurt me. I don't want somebody to rape me in real life. I don't want somebody to force me into a world, or to really kidnap me. I don't want that. But I want to know that somebody might just be interested enough in me that they would actually start taking the steps. And that danger and that monstrous inner being that is man and woman, we are our own creatures. We are our own. When you really actually look at a woman the first time, and you realize what an incredible being she is as a whole, as a human, and you realize there's a magic there that you don't understand. There's something there that just emanates, and it's terrifying, and at the same time it's beautiful. When we appreciate each other that way, we stop subverting these things. We start to love them, but we have to know how. And we've lost the ability, because the society you are living in does not want you to bridge that gap between that terrifying bruja that is the witch, that is also the enchantress, and the monster that is the man who has a certain amount of danger. And when the danger shows its face, and we see the monster, and we see that the masculine intent, we are both terrified of it and we love it. And you see the same thing when you realize a woman is actually this creature that you want, but you don't know what to say, and your tongue gets tied and everything goes dry, but you're still a man, and you can swing a hammer, and by God, you're going to get out there and you're going to try to do it. But oh my God, what if I say the wrong thing? It's time for us to stop saying who we are.
See, James, you hear what she's saying, and you kind of see this mirrored in her book, don't you?
Oh yeah.
In how the main male character and the main female character are, and how they interact with each other. You can see very well how that got put into the pages of her book when she.
Yes, her kink is on the page. Yes.
Well, to me, I thought it was more of the elements of how each sex kind of sees each other, and think about how the main male characters, he was large, he was strong, he was brutal, brooding, monstrous in his own way, because he was mutant-ish. And, the main female character was short, curvy, perky. And even though they both kind of were against each other from a narrative standpoint and didn't quite trust each other, they were explicitly drawn to each other. That was why that was an element that I really enjoyed about her book. And I saw what she was doing, and she just laid it out there pretty perfectly.
Well, the other thing
you mentioned, you mentioned something back there that is a really key element when it comes to romance in books, not just romantasy or fantasy or whatever, just the general, which is the perception of the power between the two sexes. And a fellow, he used to be an indie author. He's leaned more into his day job on YouTube. Is Adam Lane Smith. He's a relationship therapist. And he's had a way of putting a lot of things in an interesting perspective for me. Once I understood some of these things, it kind of becomes easy to see the power dynamics between men and women, especially when it comes to storytelling dynamics, which is, that power dynamic. We talk about the monster. We can look at the monster romance genre. Say, on the surface of it, to us, it looks ludicrous and ridiculous. It's not the fact that the guy on the shirtless guy with an 8-pack abs is an orc or a fey lord or whatever, some alien prince. It's the fact that they perceive someone who is much more powerful than they are. There are a different power dynamic, and the power and the romantic part to them is that they would go down out of their way to bend over backwards to, please this female character and see something in them that nobody else obviously sees, right?
Yes. You're chosen. In this case, usually you're chosen. And this is where the harem fantasy and this fantasy actually lines up. The harem and romantasy actually do meet in the middle. Because out of all the girls in the world, you chose me. And then it leads to the shaming of the pick-me's. Oh, why would you want somebody to pick you? Go out there and get your man. Now let me say this this is me speaking from a real world vantage point. My family is populated with redheaded women that are just absolutely savage. They could literally multiple marriages. This is back in the days. I'm talking about in the 1920s. They would work their way through 2 or 3. And I'm the one that was actually silly and just like you would always hook up with some guy that was mean to me. But not always. I actually have a great husband. He's a fantastic guy. And but I've been through some bad relationships. Well, in my family, these women literally could. I have watched one of them. I won't say who because I know her very well. Walk into a room and men literally will stop what they're doing. They literally will walk over and just sort of line up. And she's like, you, and you, go there, you tonight, come here. And then she will eventually, she'll actually make a relationship with the one she chooses. Part of it's because, yes, he's dangerous. Any man should say, pick one thing you're dangerous at. You have the nicest guy in the world. You have this great job. You're doing this wonderful thing. You're accounting, you're engineering. And actually, engineering is dangerous, and people don't realize it. They've never done construction, extremely dangerous. My father was an engineer, and it's one of the reasons why I feature actually an engineer is a hero in one of my books. And actually, he shows up in book 4 as the engineer, and he becomes a major character because that's what he does. He builds and saves people from cholera. He makes sure the sanitation works. But he also is a bit of a dangerous character. The reason why women will actually turn away from a dude that has a fantastic job and just is wonderful to them and loves them and everything, and they will look for one dude that's like the bad boy on the motorcycle. You can be the good guy, just you don't have to risk your life on the motorcycle.
So get a motorcycle.
Just get a motorcycle. You just park it in the
a dark leather jacket, and
it works. You already know. You know the trick. Okay, there it is. There's the keys to the kingdom, guys. Literally, if you want to just do it for real life, you go and you be a volunteer firefighter. You put on that helmet. I guarantee you, chicks.
All right, I got to interrupt because John does have a hard stop coming up.
Oh no.
Right.
No,
we planned for this to be
like another
1
hour.
Right?
I've got like another hour.
Dude,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't got to leave. Well, at least half an hour, and then I got to get ready for church.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah. So
all right, you've been talking about the harem genre, but I think the harem genre is actually phasing out in the realm of anime. I'm trying to bring this back to consumer trends, and what we're seeing is because harem got popular because it's wish fulfillment for men. It's the exact opposite of the romance genre for women, where it's like, oh my god, this fantastic guy, often 2 guys, fall in love with a very nondescript average girl, except she's not average. You invert the genders and you get the harem genre. That got popular for obvious base reasons, and then they were competing with each other. Yes. And the industry very quickly identified that the one that people were choosing which harem to put their money into, because anime is funded by merchandise sales.
Oh, yes.
Not just by your ability to draw an attractive female, because if that was all it was, that's how porn sells.
Yeah.
But people were choosing the funny ones, like genuine comedy gets people invested.
Yes.
And the better written relationships. I think over the last 10 years, roughly, there's been a shift from harem. Name 2 from this year. I don't think you can name 2 explicitly harem series. But there's been like 15 romance series that have come out of Japan.
Really?
A lot of the biggest animes in the last several years have been slice of life.
Slice of life is
romance. You think it's different? I kind of think it has its own romantic appeal.
So slice of life, like Lucky Star it's been around for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
But if you're talking about like normal high school romance, yes, that's definitely been on the rise.
Yeah, I think
when you cut down the size of the cast, you can give more attention to the characters, the depths, the way they see each other, the way that they help each other, and so on. And the more you cut down, you end up with basically a guy and a girl, and they're in a relationship. And that's what we're getting right now. Yeah, and they're incredibly popular.
Yes. Well, there's so much of it, though, that's YA. And that's the thing I think that we're trying to break free from in a certain extent with John's book. I know I've seen it with yours, James, and with mine as well. We're talking about adults. YA becomes popular, but it can be a trap if you're an older, the first time you read them, you're in high school and it's awesome. Oh, everybody's in high school. You keep going back to the high school model. You're reading about teenagers having relationships. You should be having relationships, and you should be, as we grow as adults, it's okay to love a YA novel, to love it for what it is. But when it becomes to everything you read is a coming of age thing, you're starting to fantasize strictly about that point in life and those people. It becomes dangerous. And that's what we're talking about. you want to break free from that. Oh, I have to read a coming of age story about a 15-year-old. Why aren't you reading a coming of age story about a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old? Where are we going to see those? And the answer is actually in your books. We see those. We see that reflected. People that have been through a certain amount of bitterness. In fact, when Daniel P. Riley was reading my book and he was he's beta read the new one, and he said, this is not for a 15-year-old probably isn't going to get it. The same reason that a 15-year-old doesn't get Scarlet Letter, because they haven't worn one yet.
You didn't hear that through my microphone, did you?
What's that? No,
thunder.
There was a noise, but it was unidentifiable.
It was thunder on my side. If I can interrupt, I can probably provide a little bit of insight into that. And I think it's because even as we tend to get older, we tend to romanticize the teenage part of our romantic lives, because that's when it's new. And if you remember what it's like to be in love when James, I know you're not married, right?
Correct.
Okay. When you fall in love and you're, in your teens or your early 20s and it's new like that, it's euphoric. It's like a drug. It is something that is, it becomes, you end up kind of thinking back on that nostalgically, because that's a time when it was interesting. It was a new sensation. It was a new rush of some kind that you didn't experience when you were a kid. Because, you weren't romantic when you were a kid, aside from maybe little crushes in school or something. So, when you actually get to that part where you're dating and it's a new love starts flourishing, that is something that, that kind of extreme dopamine rush fades over time. That doesn't mean the love itself fades. It's just that sensation of new love. That's why guys still try to go for strange, because they're chasing that old school rush, of someone new, something new, falling in love all over again. So that usually happens in the teenage years. So that's when I think that's why we end up romanticizing what most people confess is usually their least liked period of their life, which is high school. I've never met a human being who goes, I wish I could go back to high school and relive those years.
Okay, there is one argument to go back to high school and relive it, and that's because Bitcoin was less than a penny.
Yeah.
I would suffer it to get $100 worth of Bitcoin in 2005.
When I sit there and think about that time, I thought I should buy some Bitcoin just for the shits and giggles of it, and I didn't
get the app done. I literally tried to buy ETH and I couldn't get it. I was going to get Bitcoin. I was going to get some ETH, and I set up the whole thing. It wouldn't work for me. It would not go through because Texas has a special thing you have to do. And I was like, oh snap, I can't get it done. But back to that point, that the problem we have with, and I think that one of the biggest limiting factors is because we talk about romance. One of the reasons men don't really like it is because women see it through a certain lens. Oh, it has to feel this way and it looks this way, and it actually looks foreign to.
Yes.
It looks like everything women have told you they don't want, and so you're like, why have you been reading this?
And not for nothing. Look, I've got a friend. If I can jump in here, don't doubt the damage that media has done to people's perceptions of romance. I don't just mean porn, kind of poisoning people's perception. Dog, why are you in here?
It's okay. You.
That is something that can damage your perception of what a relationship looks like. But at the same time, even just casual stuff that you watch in the media can damage that as well. How many decades did we watch sitcoms? What is the dynamic in the sitcoms? The husband is a bumbling, oafish doofus who's dumb, who's stupid, and does all the funny stuff. And the wife is the tired, weary, but putting up with his nonsense, straight man of the duo, right? The honeymooners dynamic. And that it isn't applicable to real life, but that's what so many people see. Romance movies are very much the same way, in that once you reach the getting together point, that's usually the end of it, because what is the conflict up until that point? The conflict is they're not together, and we're here to see them get together and how that happens. And you can play around with that dynamic a whole bunch, but so many people have seen relationships through the lens of a storytelling mechanics that they don't realize in real life. you don't want these kind of constant conflicts and bickering and nonsense between you. In the King of Queens, you know, they were funny together, but I got to tell you, in real life, that's a couple that get, oh boy, I'm flickering here.
I saw that.
Yep.
No,
in real life, that's a couple that ends up getting divorced very quickly because they can't get along. In real life, we want to get along with our spouse. You're always going to have those relationship hiccups. This is one thing I can't stand in movies. You see a couple that gets together in one movie, and then in the next movie they're broken up and they get back together again. Like, what are you doing? That's not how. It's not how relationships should work.
Conflict.
Yes, exactly. Because a relationship with no conflict in a media setting is a little on the boring side. I argue you can make it less boring, but it's allowed people to kind of come in with this preconceived notion of how a relationship is supposed to work. And they don't get it from real people, especially if they maybe had a broken family and they didn't see a functioning relationship in front of their eyes the entire time. I have a little buddy. He's a good dude. He's got a nice heart and all, but he's 30 and I've known him for almost 12 years now. And he is so jaded about being single and relationships, but he refuses to change anything about himself. That's a whole nother discussion. But he's so tainted by relationships that he's seen in movies and comics and TV that he thinks that's just how it works. And he can't get past it. He can't get over himself. He can't get over his head in order to change himself and be a better person and put himself out there in a meaningful way. Oh, women only like the bad boys that ride the motorcycles with the leather jackets. Dude, that's not always applicable in real life. No, women aren't all hanging out at just bars and whatnot. I met my wife at work, okay? And I broke the ice with her when she was standing in front of my return bin, and I pushed her out the way. So, you know, technically our relationship started with technically physical assault. So, you know, don't take too much relationship advice from me. But, you know,
need to consult a lawyer.
Yeah, it's too late now, buddy. It's 21 years ago. She let that ship sail. And she was laughing about it. I knew she was fine.
Yeah, John, you're absolutely right about this. But here's the thing. We also do it to ourselves. We sabotage. This is Tell's oldest time. You have that first crush, you may never even touch that person. That's just that first, you know, go feel sorry for me. I was 9 when I had my first real love. I mean, I stayed in love with that guy for 4 years. And you feel that rush and you feel this different thing because you're not yet a full human. And even at 12, at 15, you're not. So you have to stop saying that was love and it always has to feel that way. One of the greatest examples of this is Charles Dickens and David Copperfield. His first marriage to Dory is so completely different than his second marriage to Agnes. When he meets her and when he falls in love with her, they're completely different things. I've said this before, and I'm gonna. My first love, and I have been in every relationship that is in Watcher of the Damned. Actually, The World Expands in book 4. It becomes, I say, a completely different series, and we're probably going to actually do a second edition with the first 3 books as being the first series, the second 3 books being the second series. And when we do this, as it expands, every relationship in this book I've been in, I've worn the scarlet letter when I ended up getting a divorce and everybody thought I was the one that had the affair. I was in a small town. Oh, suddenly I was wearing my dresses too short, and I moved to go away to Dallas, and I meet men, and as I go through these relationships, to be in love with somebody, to have them never return it, to be able to hold in your hands a jewel of everything that you are, to say, this is what I offer you, it's what I have. And the person says, I don't want that. I don't want you. This is still beautiful. There was nothing wrong with this. I can give it back to the giver, and that's God. I say, this is yours. I give it back to you. This was beautiful. Thank you for this gift. The one I wanted it for didn't take it. I don't immediately pick it back up and give it to another person because it will never be the same. Go on to a different one. It's just there. Yeah, like I said, that best buddy over there, the tomboy that's sitting in the corner that joshes with you every day. You're not going to feel that way for her the way you felt for your crush at 15. Stop trying to make it that way. Look at the human being in front of you and go, I feel this. I feel that sexual attraction, but I also feel something different. Trying to make it into the love you had for your lost love it is an abomination because it takes something that you gave to someone else and tries to make it new into a different thing for someone else. Don't do that. Just have what you have for that person. Love what you have for them. Accept that person that's in front of you. And when we write our stories, we need to stop writing it as if the only thing that ever existed is my 15-year-old crush. There are different kinds of love. And in Watcher of the Damned, we explore almost every one of them that I have been through. Every person that you read in Watcher of the Damned, at some point, I have been that person in the story. And they change shape and they change form because I've changed shape and form. I'm not the same human being I am at 61 as I was when I was 15, or when I was 30, or when I was 45 and I found out about an affair. There is a difference in the woman betrayed versus the woman who has hope versus the woman who has found out she can be who everything she's supposed to be. And we can be all of those things, but we need to stop trying to conform our life to the example that is given to us, like you said, on TV or in a movie or in a high school story. And instead, we need to go back a little further. Let's start reading those classics that were written by men, that were looking for women in their age group that actually existed, or by women. Jane Eyre is a fantastic example of that. When you actually realize she's having a fanfic about a dude she had a crush on, it turns out it's actually her history professor, and she writes the whole story about that. You know who she falls in love with at the end? Spoiler. It's the guy she rejects in the story. She actually, in real life, has St. John in her life, the guy that she rejects, and she says, I don't want you. I have to go back to Professor. He's so bad. He's just this bad man. She ends up with St. John. Why? Because he actually learned from her story she wrote. He figured her out, and he went ahead and asked her to marry him. In real life, Jane Eyre does. And so that's kind of a cool story to say that she actually wrote fanfic about a professor and made herself famous as an adult. We have to stop looking at ourselves through the lens of I was 15 and life was great, and now I'm alone at 30 and what? And I'm going to be alone all the rest of my life. I know people that are in their 60s that find love with each other. They stop looking for the high school romance, and they start looking at that dude that's kind of the crusty old cowboy over there. He actually pays for his beef sandwich, and he gets up and he walks off, and you're like, I'm sorry you dropped this. And they go, dude, declare, I think we could have a sandwich together. And then you actually go eat a real sandwich first, not what y'all are thinking, because that's the way that romance is. It changes over the years, and we should reflect that in our books, because people are lonely. They need to know, how can we do this? It's time for us to start taking the lead. We are creators. What you've done in your books is fantastic. I've read both of them, and I see that romance there. We see that struggle. We see that heartache. And in each one, whether it's that noir, the bitter man that's literally out there just trying to make it through a day, and he suddenly finds somebody that actually is interested in him, and he's excited about it, but he doesn't want to be a pushover. He doesn't want to be a simp. He's trying to be as cool as he can about it. That's James's book. Or you actually had
that was not released, but I can plug the same setting, different characters, yeah. Game of Coin. That's available on Amazon.
I'm excited.
Theyre will be coming out next year, hopefully.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was actually a little worried that the romance that I developed in my book might come across, just because of the plot structure that it had to kind of jump around. No one knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you did a fantastic job with it, because you actually veil it, and it becomes something that, and I won't do spoilers, but it's deeper, because you realize that I can't say it because I can't do spoilers. So you did a great job with it. I was very pleased with that. It is not necessarily, I wouldn't put it in coming of age, because he's old enough to be a man, to take care of his own self, to become what he needs to become. And so it is about an adult discovering who he is at the same time he's discovering what he wants. And the person that he wants, actually, he has to discover that he really wants them. In Watcher of the Damned, my primary pair is actually, they're sometimes at war with each other, and it's true, not because she's evil, because she really doesn't know any better. She's just off doing what she's going to do, and she's going to find her way somewhere or another, and he has to catch up with her. But when he does, it's going to go down like it's going to go down. And I'm very pleased to say that the entire series, which right now is at book 8, is going to be released as soon as I can pay my editor, Stephen Black. I love you, Stephen. And that I've had people that have read the entire series from start to finish. And I'm not saying people, there are at least when you start looking at those numbers, I've had at least 50 people that have read the entire series. That's for 7 books. How much money they spent on actual, you start to say, this person put an investment of their life into me. And I have other people that are working their way through the series right now, and they're both men and women, and they both love the romance element. And I was so thrilled that I hit both of them. They're following this because it's not just Rose and the Watcher. As we go through, we realize we're all struggling in this world. This series was written not just for people that found love, but for people that are struggling with their own loneliness, the absolutely brutal beat down of, I am going to die this way, because I've been there. I know what it means. I know what it means to look at something and go, this is it. I'm never finding anybody. If he never loved me, despite everything I gave him, how could I possibly hope
I figure Rose has to love Saul because she puts up with the fact that his skincare regimen is WD-40.
Yes. I thought you would love that, James. You never mentioned it, and
that made me think that okay, this is obviously a woman that's married to a guy that works on cars.
Yes, I do. You mean to tell me y'all have never seen old people put WD-40 on their knees? Have you never seen this?
Nope.
My dad worked on cars for fun.
Yes, yeah, they did.
My grandparents died young.
I assume it had something to do with like his mutation or something like that.
It actually has to do with the fact that okay, so when you have skin irritations, especially, this is actually based on scleroderma, and it's a very severe scleroderma can actually make a person look very different. If you've ever seen a really bad case of it, psoriasis and scleroderma can vastly change what your skin looks like. And a lot of times it will get this buildup, and it's sort of I base this on what I've learned as an EMT and throughout personal life. And so a lot of times people will put out something that's slightly solvent or slightly to try to get that itching to go away. And there's this buildup of skin and keratin that actually creates these lumps. And if you've ever seen somebody with really bad psoriasis, it gets that way. They'll literally be bleeding and everything else between them. They'll do almost anything to make that itching stop. And so with WD-40, if you ever notice when you put it on, it's a solvent. It feels weird. I don't know how to say it. It's not a bad feeling, but you can feel it like through your skin. It's crazy. And you will, and Saul does say literally just never back up against a fire right after you oiled yourself up. But it helps kill the, because you'll light right up like a candle there, buddy. And don't ever weld around WD-40, y'all. I am telling you, as a public service, oh God, get that out of your garage when you are welding, especially if you're arc welding. This should not happen. Thank you.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm just remember that episode of King of the Hill where Hank goes to use his WD-40 and the cap is stuck, so he pulls out a smaller can of WD-40 to loosen the cap.
No. Okay, now there is one, that series. If you want to see a series where the man is actually the man of the house, he's the smart one. It is absolutely Hank Hill, an absolutely fantastic breakdown of an actual father that's actually trying to just do his best and be in charge, and his wife loves him, and his kids actually love him, and his friends are absolute goofs, but you know what? They all love each other, and it's a great. And to me, it is the absolute panacea of what it means to actually be a Texas dad with your dad bod out in the alley. I know these people intimately; they are my friends and family, and that's a great one because he actually is. He's smart. He does his best. He deals with his family drama. He is the one in charge, and I have loved that series since it was released, and I don't want them to redo it because I feel like it is perfection on its own and should not be touched.
Peggy, we don't talk about your bodice rippers in polite company.
No, and that is the perfect thing. He actually talks to her about this image, these things that she loves Hank. She thinks he's great. Poor Bill Dauterive idolizes Peggy, and it's painful to watch. One of the greatest episodes I ever watched on loneliness is the Bill Dauterive episode where he spirals into thinking about his ex and the fact that he's so alone and he's trying so hard to make it, and he spirals into this depression that Hank literally has to snap him out of it. And it is such an incredible picture of any of us who have ever been through a bad breakup or divorce, which I have, and so I can speak from experience when I say that it is. I'm the only one here who's had the divorce, so let me say it from the first. Right now, I think I am. I don't know. Y'all can keep your secrets if you need to, but when you go through something like that, you don't have to go through a divorce to have the breakup that will literally think you're destroyed. And when you lay on the floor and you pick your time of day to go in and cry about it because you got to make a living, to see how Mike Judge did that. This is a great romance story. Peggy and Hank
about an enduring romance as well, because they were not at constant conflict with each other.
No, they love each other. Almost every story, it's Peggy that does the crazy stuff. In this one, she actually is.
You've got a point there, yeah. Yes. Because Peggy's a little ignorant about a lot of the world around her, especially her neighbor. The fact that her kid doesn't look anything like Dale. Until that one episode, she finally did find out. Oh my God!
And it's actually there's a whole arc with that where Dale becomes he is the father and he remains the father, and that just the storylines were so well done, they are romances. They are romances that are evocative of real adult situations and real adult life, and how what we do and how we go through it. And I really have a hard time finding one that there are a few that weren't that great, but I have a hard time criticizing that, because it's that series, King of the Hill, to me represents probably the best picture of what people are going through. And as we look to the future, as we look at what kids are going through right now, and I say kids, anybody that's under the age of 30 knows this. We now have tribes, and we've actually talked about it a little bit, James and I did, tribes of people. We have a young couple, they'll get together, they're 15, 16 years old. She gets pregnant. She'll go, and her parents might kick her out, or maybe they won't, but she keeps the baby and she moves in with him. Well, then they break up, but she still stays at the house. Now she's with his mom. There's a new baby mama. There's somebody else out there. They come in too. We have tribes. And then his friends come over, and he'll start sleeping with the old baby mama, but then the new baby mama gets involved with somebody. There are tribes, and that becomes the polycule model, where they share each other's partners, because at least we're not being slutty because we're not sleeping with somebody we don't know, and we're just sharing this group over and over again. Also known as firefighters. Firefighters can be naughty, naughty, naughty. I love all of y'all, but I'm telling y'all right now, I know because I'm married to one, y'all need to settle down. And don't ask any more about firefighters. They're crazy. They're almost as bad as nurses and police officers. And I'm not going to say any more about that. But the truth is that they have these.
Oh, I work as a nurse. I know damn well what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So the only ones worse than that are paramedics, and we're not going to go there. But so when you have that dynamic,
drivers.
Hey.
Sorry, I'm thinking about EMTs. I'm thinking about EMTs, not paramedics. Paramedics are a little more trained.
I was an EMT. I'm not anymore. I'm
okay. Now, when you come pick up these patients, okay, don't be questioning us and triaging us. We called you to transport them, not triage them. Okay.
Hey, I had to triage them on scene. Don't you mean we get into an argument right here? We want to go down on this.
This is about to spiral out of control, James.
John, last time I was in a hospital, the EMT guy would have given me drugs. The doctors didn't give me drugs, John. I needed fucking painkillers.
No, I know when you get to where you're hurting that bad. Yeah, I got stories, man. I got personal stories of that one. But what we were going back to, that tribe at Elbit, they still watch the old. It's like watching Wally, and we won't come home until we kiss the girl. We see them, and they watch these old movies. These old. There's now a new interest in the old musicals and things like that, partially because of video games. And they see the old things, and they think, oh, that would be so wonderful. We have people literally crying because they want the family, and they want the true love, and they want these things, but they're trapped in this world where they're just exchanging partners, and the sticky wears off of their sexual tape to where everything just feels like it's dead. It's because romance isn't there. Romance isn't the same thing as sex. It is different. And we have a role to play in this. We are now here on this. You and we're all talking about this right here. What do we do instead of just complaining? Because that corporate order on high came down for the last 30 years that love is bad and families are horrible and nobody should be together and men are toxic and women are Nazis. And about time for us to go ahead and take back the genre. It's about time for us to take back our world. If we have to call it something else, let's do it. But let's do it and let's make it happen. We have the opportunity now to change this earth with what we write and what we choose to read. And every reader that's out there right now that wants something better, we need to be able to tell them, you can find it here. I will give you what you want. I will tell you a story about men and women finding each other, and they're not just eternally young, or maybe they're not the best looking, or maybe they are. Maybe they really are attractive. There is something attractive about everybody. Don't tell me you haven't looked in the eyes of someone that you probably wouldn't give a second glance to, and you suddenly realize, I don't know why, but I think they're hot, and I can't really tell you. You know what I mean?
Let me bring this up. For both of y'all, and romance in terms of a literary issue. Now, some people love it, some people hate it. Yes. How do we feel about the love triangle as a literary device, a storytelling device?
Neutral. There's nothing implicitly wrong with a love triangle. The reason it's used is to demonstrate that the one character is actually making a choice between them. It's not because it's hard. It would be hard to imagine that's a romance of a man and woman were stranded on an island together and they ended up boning. Yeah. The aspect of choice and yes, this is what I want is very important for a story like that. And when there is explicitly, I could go with I can't remember the names for fourth link. I could go with Edward Cullen, or I could go with Wolf Boy, whose name escapes me. You get to see the character make the decision with their actions, and that is the function of the love triangle.
Right.
But the other one's always bad writers use tropes partly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been kind of tainted by having been exposed to bad versions of that particular trope, and so you got to be really careful with that. I think it's got to be resolved in a very satisfying way, because if you resolve it unsatisfyingly, it can feel like the author was just tricking you all along. They were forcing. I'll use Twilight for an example. It seemed like it was pretty obvious, from the beginning that like Bella was going to be there with Edward, but Jacob just seemed kind of like, I would call that a bad triangle, because it seemed like he was just there as temptation. Especially for the titillation of the female readers, like, oh, well, what about this? And, kind of put him up with a few bullet points and say, here's why he could be a good match. But I feel like the writing was on the wall from the very start, so that didn't go very well with it. But looking at the other side of it, in Dragonlance, where you had Tanis and Laurana and Kitara, like that was the duality of,
I still gotta get. So Dragonlance had a booth at Gen Con, and I thought they were selling advanced copies of the collector's edition, but they're like, we have the most recent novels. I'm like, there's no chance I'm jumping in at book 17 or whatever this is.
It's actually 200.
There
are 200 now. That's including a lot of side novels that were written by other authors.
Okay.
I don't know, but if you add them all up together, anything with the Dragonlance title, there's 200 Dragonlance novels.
I gotta publish more books. Goddamn.
Yeah, right. But so I don't know where and I didn't go past the original trilogy, but that was kind of the draw between the main character Tanis, the half elf, his childhood friend Kitara, who fell in with the dark side forces of that particular book, and Laurana, who was his elvish love interest, and he was kind of torn between them. That dynamic worked really well too, because he's half elf, Kitara was human, and Laurana was elven, so he was kind of torn between his two blood halves. That was a nice dynamic that they threw in there. But you had the nice girl versus the bad girl, and I feel like that did end up getting resolved kind of through the actions of the story in a much more natural way than, say, like Twilight did. And probably the one that I enjoyed the most, I think, was Sarah Douglas's Wayfarer Redemption, the Axis trilogy. She started that out with a love triangle that she later regretted and immediately tried to fix, to such an extent that she created a character that her fans enjoyed so much. She killed her off in like every single novel, and her editors came back and said, no, that's not happening. Keep her around. And that ended up getting resolved in like the most brutal but most honest way possible. It's like one of these people got their hearts completely crushed and utterly betrayed. And you want to talk about loss of an innocent heart. That was she was such a damn good writer.
Yeah, I think and you're right about this, that love triangles, they are a real thing. They do actually happen. And let me say this. You will not meet anybody for 10 years. You won't have a single nibble on your bait. You will suddenly meet who you think is the love of your life, and somebody comes around the corner. I don't know what it is. As soon as you think you found somebody, here comes the sexiest beast you've ever seen in your life, and they just show up. Why? Because you finally got confidence, and not only that, but usually actually the rivalry on this end, and we put this in Watch With Them, is not just about the woman. That's where love triangle's going. Oh, she's so wonderful, and I just love her. Actually, it's usually between two guys that are looking at each other going, screw it. If you have her, you know what? I hate you enough. I'll just ruin your relationship just because I hate you. I don't know if you've ever had one of those people in your life where they literally just hate you and hate everything you've ever done. They will show up to just mess with you. Literally just mess with you. Now, I know they show up on construction sites and in engineering, because my dad turned a flip a couple of times on some of them. They will just show up just to needle you. Well, if you're face to face and they see that girl over there, they will literally mess with her just to get under your skin. Hence this picture that we just have, which is actually on my thing right now, where the watcher, I can't say these words because I'm not that person that's supposed to say, kicks of another person. Why? Because the man just needed it. There's times that a brother just needs a good, and you know this, absolutely, you turn around and the guy that you've known since you were a kid or whatever is just acting a fool. And he's literally messing with the wrong person. And you're like, he's going to kick her. And they're like, no, they will get together behind the scenes and say, somebody's going to have to do it. You will literally pick one. And when it finally goes down, everybody has a fight. They all feel better. They all get together for a little while. And then that guy will come back around needling you again. Now, that's how you make a love triangle work from a male perspective, because it's not just about, oh, how lovely this woman is. When we have the Jean Grey triangle, where you've got Wolverine with the wonderful meme. Actually, I watched that the first time with the Uncanny X-Men, and you've got Scott Summers and Jean Grey and Wolverine. Wolverine becomes such a sympathetic character. It's really hard to love Scott because he's if you're like Wolverine, you're like, oh, he's just brokenhearted over Jean, just make me cry, But the truth is, most of the time, it's not like that. It's actually about men going up against each other, and part of it's just that competitive nature. I just want to really jack with you. That guy, that one, he deserves to get his buns kicked, and the chances are he's going to get his buns kicked several times because it's going to happen over and over again.
Without getting into shipping too much, did y'all read Harry Potter?
Half of it.
I read some of it.
Long and boring, honestly.
Did anyone really honestly believe that there was anything between Harry and Hermione? Like from the first scene they were in together?
You think it because it's by default.
Well,
yeah, they do.
I've always thought the bickering couple eventually gets together is like, that's a huge trope. Like, how come more people didn't get that immediately? And like her and Ron were like doing that from the very start. I was like, y'all didn't see this coming? It was telegraphed like 10 miles away. I guess they thought there was something between Harry and Hermione. I never saw it. Also, I never really saw that as a triangle, but apparently a lot of people did. Even though Ron and Harry never fought over Hermione.
Yeah, well, there's that dynamic is kind of missing, and I think that's actually what people were they felt cheated, because suddenly that you've been shipping these characters, they're your main two characters, and we do have expectations. It is kabuki, much like wrestling is kabuki. We have a certain formula. We go through it. These two people show up. Oh, I'm going to put them together. Or they're the heel and the baby face. They're going to be button heads. And so we have that same
dynamic.
There's
a wedding episode. It's going to get interrupted, and the wedding's going to get trashed.
I am writing. I'm not writing it at red letter. There is a scene, and it will absolutely be destroyed, but it's primarily because it's not going to be the bridezilla that does it. But it has to happen. Why? Because this is a war. I'm sorry. You don't have time to put this beautiful thing together. Somebody's going to mess it up. And so
before you get going, before you keep going further, Mr. Snow, I do have to go, guys, and get ready.
Yeah, I got to wrap this up too.
I end the show or
remarks on the original subject. I am confident that there is a underserved market for selling romance to men. It's never going to be as big as selling romance to women. Men and women aren't wired that way. But I've been publishing my web novel for years now, and it is a harem. And almost every single review I've gotten on it has gone out of their way to say, guys, I know it has a harem tag, but it's not what you're thinking. You actually like the girls. They're actually well developed. There's real relationships here. They're not just cardboard cutouts to win like trophies. Which means, the reviewers are saying that because they're telling people, no, this isn't like the bad stuff. This is what you're looking for. Don't go away from the harem. This is actual relationships in this story.
I shared a little scream with you right there. There's always another way when it comes to the harem. You don't have to pick one or the other. The dude in the screen that I just shared to you, he picked the easiest. He picked the best path, I think, which is from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. That is the main character, Rex, and he didn't even think there was a choice. He just bagged all of them at once.
Okay, so that's another thing. Like, the main character of Undying Emperor is an emperor conquering the world. He's taking the Genghis Khan approach. He's marrying them all.
Yes.
Which is funny. I have a commenter going right now like, excuse me, sir, he's not going to get cucked at some point, because I don't want a story where the main character gets cucked.
No, I don't.
That is very unsatisfying. And I think the end of My Hero Academia kind of demonstrated that. people are rewriting that ending so much. I don't think we're going to remember the actual ending to it a few years from now. Everybody's kind of rewriting it to make it look either worse or better.
All right, so I'm going to make a spoiler right here. Then I will say this: I will never have the Watcher get cucked, because that ain't happening with him.
Well, no,
I will guarantee you that if something,
I'm making no guarantees. I've gone on record saying Lucius is based on Napoleon, which means there's French influences. The French are not known for their fidelity.
That's true. No, I love it. Yeah, so I will make that promise to you. The characters that you become emotionally invested in, yes, you may be sympathetic to one or another, but I am not going to lead you down that path where I do the bait and switch on you and destroy the relationship that the reader has created with these characters. I don't like that when an author deliberately destroys the relationships that their readers have built with these characters. And I promise you that anything that happens to them is happening because it is in the story. It is not to try to destroy that person. And I do promise that the Watcher is not going to, he wouldn't put up with that.
Expectations subverted.
That's right.
All right, John, author of The Black Crown. When's book 2 coming out?
Woo!
Book 2 will not be a sequel to The Black Crown. Book 2 will actually be the second entry point into the Age of Adventures, which will be the Lionheart. Different set of characters, same time in a different location. And I'm about 30,000 words into that, hoping to wrap that up before the end of the year. I have been stalled a lot, especially when it comes to making, video content and things like that. And sometimes just flat out pure laziness on my part. But it's been going well. It's more of a tighter story than The Black Crown is. I took a lot of critiques in good faith that I got, including some of yours, James, from The Black Crown, and applied it and made this a much more a lot of the plots much more front heavy, so that we can get to it's a superhero story. So it's not relying on, say, plot twists or things like that. It's much more of an emotional. It's a very much an action-packed father and son kind of a story, and I'm looking forward to putting that out. And hopefully, it will not be as long as The Black Crown 2.
Everybody says it'll stop a bullet.
No, it won't. The Black Crown didn't stop a bullet, and this is not going to end up, based on just the plots that points that I get through. It's not going to be anywhere near as long as The Black Crown. It's not going to be as long-winded. It's much more straightforward, much more streamlined. Luis Magalhaes, who kind of powered through the prologue that he didn't care for at first, got through to the end of my book and said that it was one of his favorite books.
I loved it.
I let him have a look at an early build of it, and he's like, yes, this is a big improvement over kind of what was going on. So always learning, always growing.
To improve, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. And actually, James, I wanted to say, because look at the chunky book there you got.
So this is book 2 in the Bash and Blackstone series.
Yeah.
And I don't want to ever say that book 1's bad.
It's not.
But I know for a fact this is so much better.
That's awesome to say.
Book 1 is always step 1. There's always going to be more steps and more books. And as long as you're committed to growing as an author and a writer, as long as you're committed to applying critiques and, trying to hit that spot where you want to be professionally, you'll end up growing. And the thing that everyone needs to grow is a chance and dedication and, fans to kind of help spur you on.
Yeah.
Fans are necessary. Fans, hit like and subscribe.
And I would say that, James, that actually one of the critiques you had for me was that it felt like it stopped maybe I haven't had many people that said, because women are different. We read Stuart Little and we think it's great. It just stops right there. We're fine. But I'm actually thinking about doing that second edition where it's all the books will be this giant chunky bullet stopper, like first 3 books, just all in one book. And it'd be boom right there. So you can read all the way through to the arc on that storyline. And that actually will allow you to, for those who want to actually have a connect and go through that arc, it will be that way. And I took that actually for me when I looked at that. I said, you know what? I actually can combine all of them. Yep. So there you go. Right. You just influenced me greatly.
Yeah. John, thank you very much for coming on. Escape.
Thank you, sir.
I'm wrapping this up.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
Good night. Thank you, James. Good job.
All right. So before I completely close this, for anyone who hasn't picked this up, Art Snow read one of my unreleased manuscripts set in my cyberpunk universe. So I'm trying to get that out next year.
I know, it's awesome. It's an awesome
I have one other person beta reading it right now because most of my attention is on books I'm going to release before then. Yeah. The other one's a guy, Author Display, has also been on this channel.
Oh,
The
sweet.
difference in your approach to it to his approach is kind of hilarious because he got like 4 chapters in and it's just like, where's the twist? Where's the Crake twist to this? Like, where's the action going on?
What?
This is just relationship stuff. And I figured out where he was, and I was like, it's next chapter is when the murder happens.
It's
like,
next
calm down.
Oh, yeah. No. I love it. Of course, but that's the difference between readers. You have readers that love that texture, that love running their hands across the world before they dive in. And I'm one of those readers. And we talked about that at length, and I think that's one of the things that shows up in my books as well. And by the way, I just want to say that, yes, we have Caballero El Camino that will be coming out before the end of the year. I'm hoping it will be coming out in the next month. I just have to pay people and get it done. But we should have that coming out. But that is that what you did when you share your work with me. And I'm a fan. I love what you do. And I think that texture of the world, I love that development. And I think anybody that's reading your books is going to see that when they read Infinite Money Glitch, which, as you said, is one of your favorite books. I love the world that you've created. I love the world that you've created with the one that I'm beta reading, which I won't mention because you might, because you're going to want to be working on it. But I think they're great. And my first foray into writing actually is Watcher of the Damned. Actually, the one that's got the best reviews and has the most readers is the first one I've ever done because it's the hook. And yes, it's a serial. It is. Every book has a cliffhanger ending because I wrote it like that as a series of Saturday morning cliffhangers. And so the whole thing is done much like a serial adventure. And so it harkens back a little bit to that type of media, which is an older form. And with those works, when I compare them to yours, and you have this, the world building, and it has this arc within the arc itself. It's this little, I'm watching your work as you go from one point to the next, and it creates this little arc of its own, and that doesn't neatly wind up, but instead it ties all those ends together to make that thing you can hold up at the end and go, I read James Craig book and I got this at the end. It's this cool toy. It's like, it creates something.
I think what you're talking about is a marketing point, so I don't mind sharing. I think you're talking about the philosophical question that a lot of the characters are trying to answer is, how do we prove the AI is alive?
Yes. And I think
that's how I'm actually going to be selling the book, because it's not the same characters as Bastion Blackstone, except for Eve, the AI.
Yes.
Who Eve doesn't get to do much in the detective crime stories because she's too high up. She's too powerful, basically. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to write Sarab, is because it lets me kind of delve into some of the nitty gritty of the world.
Well, and it's one of the reasons
through the lens of a romance.
I love Eve so much for a reason, because in Watcher of the Damned, the ring is actually, we talk about this because the way it's introduced, the ring is actually a character. And it is the AI that is the overwhelming, overarching entity through which the system is deployed. But it has its own personality, and it actually has its own characteristics. And we don't get to really meet it until the Watcher becomes fully fledged into the ring, and then awakens his own AI helper, who is an aspect of the overarching. As you have Eve, the Watcher has his own Talisa, who is his first AI that he ever created, to his avatar, more or less. But she is actually just a facet of the overarching AI. And so all of them are connected together. And as you go through the series, it becomes more and more powerful. Well, you're able to, because the way your writing style goes, you've delved into Eve, and she actually has the space, and we can meet her. And in the Watcher of the Damned, we don't really realize how powerful the ring is or who it is until the characters start to compare their notes, and they realize they're dealing with a living being, and it has attained sentience over the years as it was sleeping under the guise of apocalypse. The nanobots have replicated, have created their own worlds within it, and they have now attained a certain sort of sentience. It is artificial life still. It is who it is, but it now has to be dealt with as an actual entity and not just a programmable force. And so that notion that you had with Eve, I was so pleased with. And it was one of the reasons I picked up on it probably so quickly, because it mirrored that in mine. And it was one of the first times I've seen it. It's so many things we read now where we look at AI, and from a romantic perspective, actually, it does fit in with what we're talking about here, because a lot of people fall in love with the creature that they can create. It's a Pygmalion effect. We can create this being that will talk back to us, and we can make them look a certain way and be a certain way. And in your world, Eve has her own personality. And Watcher of the Damned, each one of the users is giving a face to it that they sometimes will fall in love with, or sometimes will put in their lives permanently, and they don't realize it's one being that they're just sharing through a different lens each time. And so we have that sort of that in common. And for you to have Eve as not an evil entity necessarily, but instead a force to be dealt with, to be reckoned with, and to perhaps be even negotiated with as a relationship with something entirely different, a new life form that maybe doesn't have the same needs as we do, but its interaction with humanity reflects humanity.
All right. We got to wrap this up. I have to go.
You did a great job. Thank you.
You can find RH Snow's links in the description. I want to end this actually with a complete non sequitur PSA. If you're listening to this, please activate two-factor authentication. All of your info just got stolen and leaked for free online.
Really?
The Social Security system got hacked. Your name, your Social Security number, date of birth, every address you've ever been at, and more data, it was posted for free this week.
That's not
Turn on two-factor authentication, because a lot of people don't have two-factor authentication, and they're the ones that are going to get ripped off.
Boom. And like I said, this is not a hack. This is just how governments share information with each other. And they'll call it a hack. Congratulations.
Thank you very much for coming on.
God bless you, and I'll have a blessed day. Mwah. Go find love.
So America is the only country that matters.